Good morning, grade 12s, and this morning we are going to talk about the grouping of our compound time signatures. And just before I start, I'm wondering how you guys are. I was thinking this morning, it feels so weird, I'm talking into the camera. I really wish that you could actually all sit in front of me and ask me questions, but of course that's why I've got the Zoom session every Friday afternoon at 3, and I really want you guys to join me, you and your teachers. You know, we all here to learn and make sure that we understand all the work so that we can get the best mark in the final exam that we can get. Okay, so I first want to just quickly make sure that you still remember the main difference between simple time and compound time, and that is the value of our beat. And like you can see, I already wrote a lot of stuff on the board, and I'm going to just quickly steal some space here because I need to check that you understand this. So if we take a simple time signature, say for example like 3/4, I'm sure you know that it means we have 3 crochet beats in a bar. Then we take something like 6/8. Now, very important, you need to understand, in maths 3/4 and 6/8 mean exactly the same thing, but not in music. Okay, it's not the same, because in 6/8 you have 2 dotted crochet beads per bar. So like you can see, the difference between our beats in simple time versus compound time is that in simple time it's a simple note value, whereas in compound time it's a dotted note value. Okay, so that is the big difference. So naturally in simple time, when we divide our beat, it's going to split up into 2, whereas in compound time it's going to split into 3. Okay, so that's really very, very important that you understand that main difference. Okay, so I'm just going to talk about beat values for a while, now that you can just see how we split up a beat. Just so that you don't get confused here, I'm going to take this out. So let's just quickly look at the division of our beats. So first of all, whenever we work with a dotted crochet as beat value, the division of the actual beat is going to look like this. Okay, I saw yesterday the pages I pasted on the board was a bit small, so I hope you can see this a bit better. So whenever we work with a dotted crochet beat, like I just said, we naturally split up into 3. In this case you can see it now splits up into 3 quavers. If we subdivide each of the quavers, we're going to have 6 semiquavers in total. Then we can also split it up into triplets, like you can see here. An alternative way that you can also split it up is to have this 3 groups of triplets separately, like here. So whether you write it like that or that, they both accept it. Here I split the beat or the subdivisions up into demi-semiquavers, and alternatively you can also put them together like this. However, I don't know about you, but for me this is really confusing to read. In principle, I know there needs to be 12 demi-semiquavers, but only in principle. When I look at this, I really can't see that there are 12. So personally, I actually prefer splitting it up like this, because remember, the purpose of grouping is to make it easier to read. Okay, so which time signatures in compound time would actually have a dotted crotchet bead? And it's going to be all our time signatures. Oh gosh, I'm making some space again. This is my space block. So if we look at anything with an 8 at the bottom, we are going to be working with dotted crochet beads. So how do I know it? So remember what I said. In compound time, it's any time signature with either a 6, a 9 or a 12 at the top. Okay, those are your compound time signatures. So how we work out what the value is of a bead and how many beads we have in a bar, I did explain it, but I'm going to do it again. We divide the top number by 3, the bottom one by 2. Okay, so 6 divided by 3 is 2, 8 divided by 2 is 4. Meaning we are going to have 2 dotted crochet beads in a bar. Okay, so in 6 over 8, we're working with 2 dotted crochet beads in a bar. If we take something else, say let's take 12 over 8. Okay, we do exactly the same calculation, divided by 3 and 2, and that is going to give us 4 over 4, meaning 4 dotted crochet beads in a bar. Okay, so that is how we work out our number of beads and the value of a bead in compound time. Okay, so then we also have our time signatures where we have dotted minim beads in a bar. So let's quickly have a look at them. Okay, so whenever you have, whenever you have a 4 at the bottom, so say for example you have 6 over 4, okay? We know it's a compound time signature because there's a 6 at the top. So when we divide it by 3 and by 2, so this part of the calculation always stays the same. So 6 divided by 3 is 2, 4 divided by 2 is 2. In other words, we are working with 2 dotted minim beads per bar. Okay, so another place where you might have it is, say we have 9 over 4. Okay, so to determine the number of beads and the value of beads, we are going to divide again by 3 and 2, which is going to give us that. Okay, in other words, 3 dotted minim beads per bar. So whenever there's a 4 at the bottom, we are working in dotted minim beads. Okay, good. So let's quickly have a look at how we divide a dotted minim bead. Okay, so I printed this out for you guys just to save some time. So you can see that I have my 3 crochets, okay, and then I can divide each crochet into 2 quavers. We put everything together on the same beam. Why? Because it belongs to our dotted minim bead, and everything belonging to the same bead we normally put together, except when we get to our smaller note values, as you can see over here. Okay, again, you can even over here, you're welcome to, no, you would actually put all of this together. Okay, and when we work with triplets, we are going to just still have the triplets on the same 2 beams, but because of the number of notes and it starts to get confusing to read, we actually split it up. Okay, it doesn't mean that we're now working in 3 crochet beads. Okay, remember the bead value is still a dotted minim. Okay, and when we our note values get smaller, so say for example with demi-semiquavers, again, just because it's going to be easier to read, we're actually going to just split the bead. Okay, we split it up into our 3 crochets, and we put the demi-semiquavers in crotchet, in crotchets, okay, not crotchet beats. Okay, this is just so that it's easy to read, because if you're going to put all of this together, good luck playing it. Okay, so that's the only reason why we don't put it on the same beams. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the grouping of notes and rests in compound time, and I'm going to start by just looking at notes. So you remember that when I discussed simple time, I said that everything forming part of the same beat is put together. Okay, that same principle still applies to compound time. What we're going to do now is we're going to extend what we've learned in simple time over into compound time. And I'll show you what I mean by that just now. Let me just quickly clear our block that I don't confuse you now. Okay, so you remember that I said that you can, when we, in simple time, we can put beat 1 and 2 together if it's a long note. We can put beat 2 and 3 together if it's a long note. And we can also put beat 3 and 4 together if it is a long note. And that same principle applies in compound time. Okay, so I've written this out so you can see my time signature here is 9/8. So just to make sure you understand how I divide it, so remember it's 9/8. So we're going to divide by 3 and by 2, giving us 3/4, meaning 3 dotted crochet beads per bar in 9/8. And here you can see I've got a dotted minim where I combined beat 1 and 2, okay, and then beat 3 is on its own. Okay, so I'm applying exactly that same rule in simple time, but now in compound time. And over here you can see that I gave you an example where I put beat 2 and 3 together. So just to make sure you understand how I divided it, so 12/8. Okay, so it gives us 4 dotted crochet beads per bar. So there is my first dotted crochet bead. Then bead 2 and 3 is put together because it's a long note, and then we have bead 4. So typically in the exam, if they had to give you an example which is incorrect, asking you to improve the grouping, it would look something like this. Okay, so I'm working with the same example here. Say something like this. Sorry, I'm really squeezing this in. Okay, so they say improve the grouping of that bar. Okay, so because you know that you're working in dotted crochet beads, you know you put everything belonging to the same bead together. So this is going to become that. And because you know that you are allowed to put bead 2 and 3 together, so bead 2 would be a dotted crochet, bead 3 would be a dotted crochet. Okay, we know that we can actually put it together as one long note. We're going to replace this with that, and this one is fine the way it is. Okay, and then here is an example where I show you how I put bead 3 and 4 together. So like we worked out here, we know that our relative simple time signature for 12/8 is 4/4. In other words, we work with 4 dotted crochet beads in a bar. So here's bead 1 dotted crochet, bead 2 dotted crochet, and then because bead 3 and 4 is it is just one long note value, we can actually put it together. Okay, so you are allowed to do that. However, you'll remember when I discussed simple time, I said that we can put beat 1 and 2, 2 and 3, and 3 and 4 together if it's a long note, and also if we subdivide the beats. That doesn't work the same way in compound time. Okay, so the only time that we are allowed to group beats together is if it's a long note value. That's the only time. Okay, good. I trust that you are clear on this. You can always ask me questions on Friday over Zoom if you like. Now, let's quickly have a look at rests. Again, I want you to see how the same rules that we had in simple time, we just extend into compound time. Okay, so you'll remember that the basic rule of rests in simple time is that you group in separate beats. Okay, the only time that you are allowed to put rests together is in quadruple time, and that also applies when we look at compound time. Okay, compound quadruple time. So I said here it's the same as simple time. You can only combine your rests in compound quadruple time, and here I gave you an example of it. So if we look at the time signature, time signature 12/16, if you work out the number of beats and the value of beats, we just use our same little formula. Okay, so we're going to have 4 dotted quaver beats in a bar, and here you can see how I group the first two, beat 1 and 2, together as one rest, and then there is my third beat, my dotted quaver beat, and the last one a dotted quaver rest. Okay, and you'll remember from simple time that under no circumstances may we group rests together, not even in quadruple time, when it gets to beat 2 and 3. Again, exactly the same as in simple time. We also allowed to put beat 3 and 4 together if it comprise of a long rest. Okay, good. Then I'm just going to quickly talk to you about how we group rests within a beat. Okay, so up to now I've been looking overall, at the different beats and under which circumstances we can group it together. And now I'm going to look at how we can actually use rest within the beat. Okay, so the example I wrote here, I took 6/8. In other words, the relative simple time signature is 2/4, meaning 2 dotted crotchet beats in a bar. So you can see there's my first beat, and there is my second beat. So whenever the first and the second subdivision of the beat, so remember we can split each beat into 3. Whenever the first and the second subdivision of the beat is silent, we can actually put it together as one rest. Okay, and if we look at the subdivision here, so remember these are not beats. Okay, I'm writing it in blue to indicate the subdivision of the beat. Okay, you're never going to count 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 in 6/8 in any way. So here you can see that my first subdivision is a quaver, and if the second and the third subdivision is silent, we need to use separate rests for them. Okay, so difference there. So whenever the first and the second subdivision is silent, we can put it together, but not if it falls on the second and the third subdivision. So whether these two rhythmic patterns swapped, it would be the same principle. Okay, so I'm talking about the subdivision of any beat. Okay, and then just a smaller little thing that I want to show you guys. In compound time, whenever you have a dotted rest, you can also write out the dot in the form of another rest. So you can see I gave you 9/8 here. In other words, you are going to have 3 dotted crochet beads. So there's my first dotted crochet bead, there's my second one, and there is my third one. So instead of writing a dotted crochet rest here and a dotted crochet rest here, I do have the option to replace the dot with its value. Okay, very important though is if you do decide to use this method, just be consistent throughout that particular example. You're not allowed to do it like this, say for example on the first beat, and then when we get to the third beat here, we cross over to writing it like that. Okay, so that would be wrong. So either you have to change. I'll use my little lapik here. I know that you guys don't like it when teachers erase something with their fingers. So there you go. So it either needs to look like this, so both these dotted crochet rests have a dot, or both of them, both dots need to be written out in the form of another rest. And then of course if a whole bar rest, that's my final point. Whenever a whole bar rests in compound time, no matter what compound time signature it is, 6/8, 9/16, 12/8, it doesn't matter what compound time signature you are working with, you are actually going to just use a semi-brief rest as a symbol to indicate that the whole bar rests. And I think that is it. Let me just quickly see. Yes, that's all I wanted to discuss with you guys in terms of your grouping. And one thing that I just want to remind you of when it gets to grouping is that I want you to trust yourself when it gets to it. You've been playing a musical instrument probably since you were little. Okay, since you were little, your brain started remembering patterns, and because you've seen so many different pieces throughout all the years that you've been playing your instrument. So if you look at a piece of music, and when you look at grouping, your eye would actually pick up things that look weird. Okay. And so trust yourself that actually over time you've been conditioned to know how correctly grouped notes and rests look. And when it gets to correcting it in any example, just trust that gut feel of you as well, whether it looks right or whether it looks wrong. Okay, good. And that's basically the final part on grouping. And I hope that you come right. Please do your exercises, and what I would also maybe suggest is that you just get a couple of real music examples, any composer, and then just page through different simple time signatures. Look at how the composers actually group the notes in the particular simple or compound time signature, and compare it with what I revised here with the grouping of notes and rests, and you're actually going to see, oh yes, look here, this is exactly what the composer did, and that's going to help you to really get confident in grouping, knowing that you can actually do it. Okay, see you soon again.